everybody. Welcome to Sports Lady. I just wanted to see how awkward we could kind of make it in that first couple of seconds. Just wanted to stare right into your soul there. Brian
Mission
Slay, Ray Bradley here for Sports Lady on the Next Professional Athlete platform. Been a couple weeks since we were on. Some things have really come down to the wire. We've now gotten into the Sweet 16 for the NCAA tournament. It's going to be opening day today. As we record, we also have some shakeups going around in the NFL draft. We have billionaires backing out of major deals to sell their team.
As is their right.
Oh, yeah, whatever. And then we might end up with a little bit of Nerd Corner. Kind of depends on the time that we have after going through this episode. But let's start with the NFL. Obviously, this is smokescreen season. Everybody's trying to, give their take here or there. Jim Harbaugh gave a glowing endorsement to his former quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. And a lot of people are telling him to, hey, why don't you test it out? Why don't you send Justin Herbert to the Patriots and take J.J. at number 3? Just do that.
Prove it.
But yeah, so we bring up J.J. McCarthy because he seems to be the guy that is just shooting up the draft boards right now.
Yeah, there's always one every March.
Every single time right before the draft, that month leading up, there's always somebody that shoots up the draft board. And it seems like J.J. McCarthy is that guy this year. You and I have talked about this at work, at beers, whatever. I don't understand. Yeah, I don't understand the deal with having him shoot up the board so much into the top 5. I could see a team reaching and doing like a mid-first, late-first, whatever.
Sure.
If you're looking for a quarterback. Yeah, exactly. But, taking him top 5, I don't think he necessarily showed you I don't want to say like the leadership side of things. Obviously, you have to be a leader to be in that position and help your team get to the championship and win a championship. But it just seems like all of his tool set is not necessarily there or glowing at the moment.
Not to that top 5 level. Like that's like can't miss prospect, like crazy talent in some area, and I just have not been able to point out where or what that is even for him, other than like he's a game manager. That the team won the championship, I guess. So I don't know.
Some of that plays into how Michigan played ball, which that happens with every other team and prospect that's coming out. How was their offense fit towards them? But it's not like he had a bunch of wow throws for me where like Penix is throwing darts. You've got Caleb Williams that's throwing off platform on the run. And, same with Jaden Daniels. Obviously, he was incredibly accurate this year at LSU. It helps to have Malik Neighbors and a couple other high profile names out there. But like you still have to prove it. And Drake May, even Drake May has really stayed up there. He had a somewhat mediocre season to what he had the year before, and a lot of that is attributed to the prospects that he lost to the draft in the previous season, like the wide receiver Downs, which was his go-to connection when he was a junior. So, but like he could throw a dart and get it in there, and you've seen a couple of things that look promising. That's why he's sitting up there. But I look at McCarthy. Yes, he's had the success. He's arguably one of the most successful college quarterbacks when it comes to win-losses, in recent memory. But how much is that attributed to exactly his contribution? I don't see it.
Situation and fit.
Yeah. I don't see him necessarily taking a team to the next level if he gets drafted. I'm not saying he can't develop in anything, but what I'm seeing off of right now is just I don't see him being that game changer that you would pick in the top 5 or what you would hope would be in the top 5.
Yeah, it seems less likely that you would be able to kind of pluck him out of that system that they were in, that he was working well in, and just plug him into something else or build a system around him. It fits more to me like, a lot of these game manager guys where it's like if you slot somebody in at that spot and everything around them is pretty solid, like, okay, maybe some things can happen, but how are you building your whole offense around this guy if you're taking him top 5 now? What are those skills that you're really trying to – like with Jaden McDaniels, it's like, okay, this guy is an insane runner. He doesn't always protect himself, but he has a lot of speed there. You can do some stuff with that. Obviously, Caleb Williams has all the traits that you want and a cannon for an arm. And Drake May has a lot of those physical talents as well that you can kind of do stuff with. So, but it scares me when you get top 5 with these guys, and it's just like, what is the thing, though?
I kind of want to – I'm going to make a comparison. Feel free to shoot me down. But, you think about Clemson winning the national titles. They had game changers. Yeah, I'm ready for you. They had
Yeah,
Deshaun Watson
I think you
before
were orange.
Watson. Then you had Trevor Lawrence. Those at the time were playmaking, game changing quarterbacks. But then you look back at what Alabama was able to do before Tua. But think about it. The quarterbacks, they won national titles, but they were
I've
game
been thinking
managers.
about Alabama quarterback for years now.
That's kind of like going into my point though, is they
Yeah,
were able to win championships with solid teams around a quarterback that is better than average but not great. But
yeah,
you have that success doesn't mean the quarterback is the reason for it. AJ McCarron has been a fine backup. He obviously did exactly what he needed to do at Alabama. It's not like he was being clamored for to be a top 5 pick or whatever. It's just I'm confused and befuddled, whatever the word you want to use, for JJ McCarthy
good word.
shooting up the board this much in a short amount of time. Has he even had his pro day yet? Did they do the pro day yet? I don't.
I'm not positive. It's got to be a lot of they won the championship. It's going to be a lot of that, I would assume, and coaches want to win a winner, and Harbaugh's out there shilling for him a little bit, so maybe that's helping. And then it's just, this is the position. It is kind of what it is. There isn't really, once you get past that top 5, there are some guys who will kind of do a mid-round or a late round, but a lot of times it's like, if you want to take a shot on these guys, you do kind of have to go up and up the board more so than you're ready. I mean, even the Pats getting a Mac Jones at 10 or 15 or whatever it was, it's like, there you go. We got to try this. It's not going to happen for us otherwise.
Did they move up to 15 for that? I don't remember. That's a real question.
No, they famously stayed put and let him fall to them.
See? So you don't even need to necessarily move up in a sense.
That's a spot that I think makes a lot more sense for him, is a mid-round, okay,
Yeah.
4th, 5th quarterback off the board. I would have thought that a Bo Nix or something might be one of the people who were to shoot up. At least there's some stuff there. He set the completion percentage record. He's a gamer. So he can sling it. I don't know, but maybe those guys will end up being now more late first, early second or something. But it's just weird to me. I don't know. It just seems like people get bored with the same mock drafts after a month and are like, let's shake it up.
We got to talk about something. That's kind of how it goes. I mean, we were at work. What was it, Tuesday? And a new mock draft came out, and it had Marvin Harrison Jr. dropping down to 9. What?
Yeah, it
does. That was basically outside of Caleb Williams being the consensus top pick in the draft is now suddenly on the fringe of falling out of the top 10.
It does strike me as the clickbaity ESPN first take kind of thing of just let's get people to watch the show today. Let's say something crazy.
And so the name that put out that mock draft too, you and I, once we realized who it was, okay, I guess that kind of checks out. I mean, Tannenbaum.
Yep.
There's a reason why he's gotten fired from 2 different general managing jobs, and you kind of exactly what you just said. It's more clickbait. Just let me try to shake some things up. Maybe people will look at my article. I don't really know, but there's no way you can tell me that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to fall to 9. Don't get me wrong. As a Bears fan, we're at 9. I would love that, but there's absolutely no way he stays there.
I don't see it. I don't see it either. And now, Amy, Tannenbaum specifically for years has been the one that every time I'm seeing something on ESPN where I'm what the heck is that? It does usually end up coming back to him more times than not. So I don't know. I'm sure they read all the mock drafts for ages and ages, and they're like, okay, how do I make my mock draft stick out so that they'll bring me on ESPN? I got to have some takes, That's why it's called first take. You got first take. You gotta be ready. Start throwing it out there. So I don't know how much stock you could put into that. I'm just getting ready for something to actually happen here. We're getting closer to at least the date, and then we'll see some things. But I think the other quarterbacks at the top of honestly, the best case scenario is that this hype is real, and that I sent you an article the other day that Washington were to take JJ McCarthy. That would be a fantastic situation for the Pats at 3, because then they actually do. It's not just okay, take whatever the guy is there. You're kind of just in it's not a lame duck situation, but you don't get the choice. Now, if this is the case, you actually do get some agency and choice of okay, who do we actually like? Who do we actually want? Is it Jade McDaniels? Is it a Drake May? Or, I'm still personal preference and just take Harrison Jr. and take some shots at quarterback after. But having the option of McDaniels or May makes a lot of sense, and then you can kind of zero in on which direction you want to go. And if you like one guy more than the other, now it's not just like, well, this is the guy we're stuck with because they didn't get picked at 1 and 2. It's like, no, we actually do want you. Here you go. Let's do this thing. It could work out. The nightmares if we take him, which would be, I feel like, an immediate disaster. But I don't.
You have faith
really,
in your team? Come on.
I don't. Really, well, I don't.
Who've never ever had anybody ever.
Well, I'd just love to know. We don't. I mean, we don't even have a GM technically. We're in a weird situation. I mean, I don't think we're going to hire one. Basically, our like head of scouting or something is just the guy running the team now, but not a name. Classic weird Patriots stuff where people don't have actual titles but are running it behind the organization, and I'm just a little bit worried. Well, I mean, this will be a big test. We'll see. They're going to have to put out a whole draft. They're going to have to nail this pick at the top, and if they don't, I don't know. We'll see.
I don't. The lack of GM
It's just
a little
weird.
concerning.
Weird.
Sounds very mom and pop like what the Bears were doing for a very long time with no team president. Like,
yeah,
it
just feels like this random Elliot Wolf guy, and I don't know. He's not that random, but like he's behind the scenes guy.
That's a pretty well-known name.
Yes, but he seems to just have whatever it is, the craft's ears, whatever you want to call it, and is now just running the show there. So
how long has he been there?
I mean, years and years, but how much has he been doing?
Let's say the draft experts. Are we going back and looking at all of his drafts and see how many of them have actually stuck around?
Well, and how many of those are his drafts, anyways? Is he just doing the research and doing the work? He's not. He doesn't have final pick all those years. It's still Bill. So, and you can get into the hits and misses of the Pats drafts and their hits and their misses and the positions that keep coming up again, keep getting missed on. I think is easier to zero in on than some of the successes they've had. But it's been a long time since they've even had that many successes, honestly, outside of like defenders and. They're famously better at finding these undrafted corners, and suddenly he's your starting guy for whatever odd years. So we'll see what the draft is going to be. It's going to be big. I'm just hoping we stay away from JJ McCarthy. I'm happy not to be buying in on the hype. Usually the guy who
gets heard anything that links Patriots to him, so I think you're in good hands right now.
I think we're leaning towards a safer option, hopefully. But yeah, it's there's always somebody who shoots up, and it seems we've found our candidate this year.
While we're on the topic of the NFL, it's been a couple weeks since we last chatted. We had the Kirk Cousins signing the last time we were on air, basically recording. Wow. That broke. The quarterback situation has sort of flattened out across the league. Everybody has made a bunch of moves. Even it seemed like the last domino to fall was Justin Fields, when a lot of people thought that would be like the first one.
Yeah.
And so I was going to ask your opinion on a lot of these quarterback moves. Some of them were just moved for like backups. Like Howell went to Seattle in a trade to be a backup now for Geno Smith. Fields went to Pittsburgh. He's probably going to be the backup / could become the starter for Russell Wilson. I know you and I feel the same way on that one. That doesn't really make a whole bunch of sense.
I'm immediately just jumping on that because this is the most interesting one by far, and probably both of these guys that the Steelers got. But it just seems bizarre to me that they seem to have made like a lot of promises to Russell Wilson in like a 48-hour period where he hasn't even played for their team, and they're like, "Nope, you're the starter. You're our guy." It's like you're not paying him. He's never played football for you. What is going on? Why is Fields not immediately? Like, of course it should be a competition. We'll figure out who's better. But, like, it's bizarre to me that you would even come into it being like, no, this guy's the starter. We trust him. He's earned it. It's like, he just got here on a plane 2 days ago.
It sort of reminds me of what happened in Chicago the last couple times. Like, Glennon signing, he's our starting quarterback. And then we drafted Mitchell Trubisky. And it's like, oh, we prematurely said he's going to be a starter. And the same thing with Justin Fields. We got Andy Dalton. Andy's our starter. He's QB1. And then you drafted Fields. And it was just like, well, do you really think he's going to be QB1? And that's kind of how I feel about the Steelers situation. They signed him to a 1-year deal, so it's not like you need to guarantee him anything. Like, in all honesty, he could have sat at home and collected a paycheck from Denver and be perfectly fine. But like, even Tomlin said in an article early last week, or maybe it was mid last week, but either way, he said, there's a lot of meat left on that bone with Justin Fields. So I feel like he's got more ideas for Justin than than what was led on with Russell Wilson leading. I mean, Russell Wilson had a better year last year in Denver than the year before, but it wasn't anything spectacular. Like he seemed middle of the pack. Like, why wouldn't you want to try to, you know, you're investing an extra year basically in Justin Fields if you pick up his fifth year and just roll with it. Like, if
Yeah,
you're saying there's a bunch of meat left on his bone, it seems like you've got trust in yourself to help develop him where the other team that just had him couldn't.
Yeah, and I mean the upside's obviously a lot higher with one than the other. There's a longer term future if you're to hit with Fields rather than like I just don't. The only thing that would concern me is that Tomlin is very much. I could see him just being like, start the vet, let's get to the playoffs. I just want to go 9-8 again. Like, if that's the case, maybe he goes that way. But I still don't think that gives you the best chance to win. His year was okay last year because Sean Payton got sick of using him and was just he wouldn't make the throws they needed to win the games, but he would do just enough and check it down and get it down the field. The numbers ironically did look pretty good, but it's just like I'd be watching those games as someone who had Jerry Jeudy, and I was constantly just like, this guy cannot fucking throw downfield at all. And yeah, he's got other problems with his game now. It hasn't aged as well. Have him kind of being this mobile quarterback who can make things happen after a play breaks down. That's happening less and less the longer the career goes on, and that was always what made him the best.
Yeah. So and my other gripe is, seems like Russell Wilson's just like not a good guy, teammate, maybe not a good teammate. You know, he's perfectly fine outside of the football field, but
it's too cheesy for people, and they can probably see through a lot of it, and it rubs
100%.
off very, very, very quickly. I mean, that was the whole thing in Seattle with the entire Legion of Boom, right?
Yeah, and what I was going to talk about was like, for a moment I thought it might be okay. Like, Justin's problem was processing things quickly, and it seemed like Russell does a decent job at that. But then I'm thinking back, Russell's not going to be one of those guys that's going to help you try to develop, because he's trying to be uber competitive and not going to probably give you tidbits to help take his job, even though it's a 1-year deal. Like, you're not making a home in Pittsburgh if you're Russell Wilson, but I don't ever see him helping out somebody else in the quarterback room to help develop.
He's playing for his career this year. Like, this could be it. Like, he's already on a league minimum deal. He's on a 1-year.
Like, partially because of that came from Denver, but yeah.
It is, but it's like coming off of this, if once all that money's out or whatever and it's fresh, they're not going to be people jumping to sign him. So, yeah, if you're in that position for your career at the quarterback position where there is one, yeah, you're probably not going to try to help the guy behind you that much. So I can understand that. I don't understand why you wouldn't be going for Fields there, but hopefully it just becomes a competition, and I think at that point it would become kind of obvious which direction you should go. Mm-hmm. But we'll kind of see. A lot of the other quarterback position, yeah, there's like little random things like
the Vikings to the Vikings.
That's kind of, yeah, but it's like things that are like, it makes slightly more sense than like the Mike Glennon deal back in the day, where it's like they actually like gave him money and then drafted a rookie. It's like at least the Sandarno's is like 1 year, $10 million. It's like either he's a bridge guy or you draft a guy. I mean, you probably draft a guy regardless and have him play half the games in the back half of the season or whatever.
Well, here's one more thing on the quarterback position. We talked about it briefly at work the other day, but Dak Prescott, the news out of Dallas is like, hey, we might be willing to let him walk next year because he's going to be too much money on the books if you try to re-sign him. And honestly, I think with how inflated some of the QB contracts have been, mainly I blame Daniel Jones. But
it's always going to happen. It's just that's happened. The fact that was the guy who got it wasn't great.
It was the natural progression of how things are going. Yeah. And it happens every single year. A new quarterback becomes the biggest contract, yada, yada, yada.
The cap jump this year, yeah.
But for Dallas, they invested so much money in Dak Prescott, and he's never been able to get them past the first round or wild card round, whatever round they're playing in. They can't win that first playoff.
Yeah. I have a weird one with this because, well, the thing is, like, they're going to have to re-sign CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons in the same summer where they might potentially have to bring Dak back. So it's like one of those guys is going to probably have to go. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time
wouldn't you want to just bring in a younger quarterback anyways? All that money, you'd rather spend it on a receiver and an edge rusher where the receiver can help the younger quarterback that you bring in? Like
100%. It does make a lot of sense in that regard. I don't even necessarily blame Dak for this because to me,
Oh no,
this team will never have success as long as Jerry Jones keeps
I agree.
meddling and trying to be the coach. So it doesn't even matter because he continues to hire horrible head coaches who make the team inept. Like the last two plays that have gotten them out of the playoffs have been just completely like boneheaded offensive plays where there's not even really an option, and then they just go out like nothing. So like, I've always thought Dak was a pretty good quarterback, kind of not quite in that top tier of guys, but in that next tier. But if you're, it's hard to not pay the top tier guy the top tier money because you're just there's always going to be a little bit of an imbalance there, even if they do play well for you. And like you said, like it just becomes a lot easier to build a team if you have that money cut in half and you can fill it in other places, like what the Niners continue to do every year, where they just have some guy at quarterback, even though they did pay Jimmy G a little bit at the time. But they, especially now in this current thing where they can just load up on everything around them. Although we'll see with Brandon Ayuk, who's also kind of talking, putting some stuff on social media that makes you look interesting. So we'll see if he even is back. But yeah, it becomes a money problem for Dallas, which is ironic. It's not like they don't have the money, but
So the team,
uh, yeah, as long as Jerry's there pulling the handles and trying to be the guy, I don't think they will ever have success. I don't really think it matters who the quarterback is, but it does seem like there's a breakup coming. And then where does that leave Dak? And I mean, I would imagine some team is going to want to sign him. Like he is
some
still
people
like
definitely come and
pretty,
swoop him up.
pretty solid 30s QB. You know, he's got a lot of meat on the
I mean,
bone.
I
Still.
bet you he probably still has at least 5 more years after he's done in Dallas. I mean, like,
Yeah, and it's like if Kirk Cousins is signing with Atlanta for that much, why is
off
that?
of an Achilles injury, by the way.
Yeah, and are we remembering how Kirk Cousins' last playoff run ended when it was 3rd and 10 and he checked down to the line of scrimmage and the game ended? Like, I don't know. I would anticipate, like, why could Dak not get a deal similar to that for a team that wants to kind of jumpstart and get ahead?
I
And
would look
has a lot
for I
of
would look for whatever team doesn't jump up in the draft to take a QB, that I would put Dak Prescott probably on their radar for the following year. Like a team
I
that needs a QB but doesn't move up to try to really go get one.
I just thought of this. I mean, there's a chance if this Will Levi's experiment doesn't work out, maybe
Tennessee.
that's an option. They've got some other players around there now with his old teammate Tony Pollard and signing Calvin Ridley. And if they feel like the rest of their team is coming into form and Levis isn't really working out, that's he's out pretty quick. Maybe I mean I don't
Here's
know what the
another
money
one for
situation
you.
is at that point, but that might be interesting.
Here's another one for you. And they might have a new head coach next year, so it might be a good fit to a new coach, new quarterback. What about New Orleans? It's not like Carr's going to be there forever.
Yeah,
That's a team
God,
that's going to have, going to need
he's
some
so
help at quarterback position.
he's
So, like, there's a couple spots where, like, and I don't see New Orleans trying to take a quarterback this year.
God, I'm gonna have to watch Derek Carr offense a whole nother year with Kamara. Oh, he's so bad. His own fucking his own receivers and stuff are hating him on the field during these games because he can't throw downfield. He's the check down king, which works for Kamara. I mean, there's a couple of games where he had like
It
12
works.
percent.
It works if you have Kamara in fantasy,
But
but
the
everybody else in
problem
the
is,
real world that wants to see them win, they're pissed off.
and it also doesn't. It just provides a sort of okay floor because they're not getting down the field and scoring consistently enough for it to actually be helpful. It's just like here's another 3 yard game. He literally would have like 12 catches for 20 yards. Like it wouldn't do anything. It would just have a little bit of a supplementation. So yeah, I'm not excited to watch another year of Derek Carr. They get real weird with their money over there in New Orleans, so maybe they could squeeze him in there and add void years and weird dead cap money and blah blah blah. Restructure all sorts of stuff, which is seems like they're constantly like getting away with a Ponzi scheme or something. But
Here's another one, and it really depends on if they draft a quarterback this year or not. What about Seattle? Isn't Geno in his final year? You took Howell in just as a backup.
No.
You don't see him starting. But, like,
No.
Seattle
I
could
don't.
use some help at quarterback after Geno leaves. Again, it really depends if they take
So,
this year. If they
yeah,
do, I don't see that.
I don't have a good read on like what their plan is at all. I didn't totally get why Pete Carroll left to me, other than like age, I guess, and you want something new. But you kind of went through this whole thing where you like Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson, who's it going to be? We can't have both. We got to get rid of one. We're going to get rid of Russ, which is like not the choice most people would have made at the time, and they do, and it actually works out gangbusters. And then a year later, they're like, all right, get out of here, Pete. It's like, okay. So maybe they just want the full reset and there's age stuff and they're kind of stuck in the middle. But it's hard to know what the team direction is now. Like, are they in like a little mini rebuild? Are they gearing up again to go do stuff? They still have like some great offensive weapons and
How
maybe
long is
less
Tyler's
defensive
contract in
weapons.
Arizona for?
They cut Jamal Adams, so they cut bait on that. Kyler, I mean, he just got an extension, so he's at least got like 3-4
Okay,
years
see,
on it.
that's what I thought. I didn't know what his contract was.
Pretty sure. Pretty sure. I mean, but yeah, well, I mean, they're probably going to trade him for JJ McCarthy, so I wouldn't. I don't think that'll be
Oh yeah,
an
he's
available spot.
still he's under contract till 2028. So yeah, well, a potential out after 2027.
I'd be intrigued to see where Dak goes, though. That's like kind of a more exciting free agency signing than Kirk Cousins to me.
100%.
But they're close.
I mean, like, yeah, I think
Kind of.
production-wise, Dak is a little bit better, but it's basically the same person, So
Yeah,
I'm with you
yeah.
on that
Similar.
one. It'll be interesting to see where he
Similar. Yeah, and yeah, it'd be hilarious to see him. God, is there any way we can get him to another NFC East team or something?
I was
I
thinking
mean,
the
I
Giants,
hate all
because
these.
they're going to be done on Daniel Jones, but I doubt they would want to
Yeah,
spend that much money on another quarterback after giving.
right after.
And
Yeah,
they're probably
yeah,
going to
that's
pay
fair.
Jones too, because they're going to probably end his contract early. So
Yeah, yes.
otherwise,
And Washington
Washington's
take
going to draft a
somebody in the
quarterback,
draft.
and Jalen
We're trying to make the 7 or 8 NFC East matchups that we get every Sunday night, Monday night football a little more interesting because I just get so bored by them so quickly.
No, I'm with you. I'm always tired of them forcing the NFC East down our throats on Sunday night football.
Yeah, well, get ready again.
Yeah, well, nothing ever changes there. Let's change the tune a little bit. It is MLB Opening Day.
Okay.
I'm excited about it, mainly just for opening day, because opening day is kind of like its own holiday, and then the day after kind of goes back to regular work days.
Yeah, it's opening day and it's the World Series, and then it's everything
Well,
else.
you get opening day, you get about a week after MLB All-Star break to see like where teams are and what they need to do to make the playoffs, and then the final like 3 weeks. So you get about a solid month, a little more of like quality baseball. I'm not saying baseball's not fun, but it's very repetitive. 162, you play that many games in about 180 days. It's a long grind of a season. So yeah, I get excited for opening day, but when it comes to the day-to-day, I'm not sitting down trying to watch all 162 Cubs games.
It's not possible. So yeah, how are you feeling about the Cubs? Are they looking? What do you want to talk about in general with this? You're the leader here.
I was just excited to talk about just anything. I mean, for the Cubs, I think we have a chance to win the division this year. We had a really good showing from Wicks, one of our starting pitchers, who I believe is opening day starter for the Cubs. And they're going to be taking on Texas Rangers, who won the World Series last year. Apparently, the cheapest ticket for that game is $225, which I find somewhat hard to believe, but I guess it is ring ceremony and banner raising day, so I guess I sort of understand that.
In Texas?
Yeah, it's in Texas. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and it's opening day.
Yeah, it's opening day. Yeah. So like I somewhat get the price tag of it, but at the same time that seems very high for opening day. But yeah, we kind of swung and missed on quite a few free agency acquisitions, but they brought back Cody Bellinger on basically a 1-year deal. It was a 3-year signed deal, but each year comes with a player opt out. So if he plays really well this year, he'll probably opt out and go back into free agency. And they picked up some minor pieces, nothing too crazy, but for the most part, they brought back a lot of the younger guys that they had last year on a team that I would say outperformed what they were supposed to do, but still ultimately fell flat after a promising mid-season bump. They just fell out of the playoff contention over the final couple weeks because they ran out of gas.
I remember. I remember that actually. Now.
So
what are the expectations or hopes or timeline for this team? Is it like playoff making time, or are you still kind of?
It's kind of like a
figuring
it out. Like we're expected to win around 86 to 88 games, but our division isn't necessarily the strongest. So we may win the division, but we'd probably be the 4th best team in our league. So it's kind of hit or miss because our division's somewhat weak this year. But we brought in Craig Counsell. We stole him from Milwaukee, and I think Craig is a tremendous manager in
Great.
developing younger talent. So I think that plays into what the Cubs are doing, playing a lot more younger guys now. Uh, that
Yeah.
that was an issue last year. They wanted to see more younger guys, but David Ross, I don't know if it was a pride thing or he just honestly thought there was a better matchup to get the older vets out there instead of the younger guys. But that kind of backfired for him. So I'm interested to see how Craig develops some of these guys, possibly
Craig.
rebuild some confidence in some other people, and I'm feeling positive about the season. I'm not saying World Series or bust or anything like that. I'll be
Whoa.
I'll be happy with
Well, my
if
age
they
is
make
good
it to a
though. That's
wild
all
card
right.
round. I know it's one game, but hey, that's more exciting
Okay.
than not making the playoffs. So
Wild card and bust. I hear you. I
yeah,
hear you.
that's kind of how I feel about it. The other, I guess, main story
Now,
going on in baseball
yeah.
is the Shohei Ohtani story. Ray, I know you're not too adverse
So
or knowledge based on this one. I'll try to break it
it's
down
okay.
as
Yeah, I heard a little bit of it, but
as I
I need the play by play real quick. It sounds a little bit messy.
Yeah, so even I'm still somewhat fuzzy on all the details, but for the most part, the story came out that Otani basically covered his gambling debts of his interpreter, and he's saying that the interpreter stole money from him. So originally, what happened was he said he gave money to his
Those are separate
interpreter,
things. Yeah.
and
Okay.
then things started to look a little fishy. Like, why were you giving money to your interpreter? And then he was saying that his interpreter stole the money from him. So when I first heard this story, I was like, I don't know. Otani doesn't seem like the guy that would probably gamble or do anything. But after hearing all these little anecdotes that are coming out and stories, it sounds like he somewhat knew what was going on, but won't come out and say that in a way. You're talking to Shohei and his interpreter that he's had since he came into the league in 2018. So this is 6+ years of friendship. Uh,
Yeah.
but like apparently he had access to his accounts, and so he stole the money. But what doesn't make a lot of sense to it all is like when you wire transfer money, like if you do over $10,000, you have to approve that. And so like
Yeah.
if he's saying that it was stolen from his account and wired to his buddy, like you had to have been made aware of that, or his buddy had all the information that he needed, which I find kind of hard to believe now because I
So
don't ever let any of my best friends know any of my bank account stuff, even if
yeah,
I've
it's
known
so
them
annoying.
forever. So, like,
I constantly ask, and you just will never tell me, which is so
yeah,
annoying.
I know. Um,
So is the worry here that like, or the scandal potential that he's giving money to his friend to make bets? Is that kind of
yes, because
what
the bets, the wages
people are worried
through
about?
an illegal bookie, not through a regular sports betting app that's approved in California or anything like that. So that's what makes it like an extra tier of what the
Weird.
hell is going on? Because
Do
for
we know these are Dodgers bets, or is it
no
just
baseball related bets from what they've seen. So he never like
okay?
gambled on his own sport.
Not,
Um,
right, which is the big worry.
yes, because obviously the integrity of the game and everything else like that. But so he's been going back and forth. He finally talked to the media. I believe it was Monday, maybe it was Tuesday, about this whole situation. But
His interpreter?
about his interpreter, he spoke in Japanese with a different interpreter. Which like
Interesting.
it's so weird because like I've heard multiple sides of it where it's like you're in a foreign country, this is basically the only guy you talk to all day every day for the
Sure.
most part, and there may be some misunderstanding between us and Shohei and the interpreter where like I don't know, maybe the interpreter was saying stuff that maybe he just thought we would like to hear, and maybe that's not necessarily true. It came out. I don't know. There's so many question marks to this whole thing where it's just like we don't know where that money came from. And he was saying that it was withdrawn in like $500,000 amount. So it's just like that is a huge number.
Wow.
Like I don't
Wow.
know how you don't notice that.
And most of his contract is this whole deferred thing too. So
Correct.
it's not as if he doesn't actually have all that cash. It's not really getting a lot. It's a lot.
He's made money from endorsements and his previous
Yeah.
contract, so he does
Yes.
have a. It was
Such a-
4.5 million that was stolen from him. He signed a $700 million contract. So take that as you will. That's a drop in the bucket to that contract, but it's a large sum of
Fascinating.
money that is confusing to a lot of people on how you would not know that money was taken out of your account. And then saying that you were covering gambling debts to then flip the story to, oh, it was stolen from me. It just doesn't check out. And then you got the conspiracy theorists who are just like, oh, why did we just hear about his wife just before this whole scandal broke out? And apparently his wife is like a
Right.
well-known international Japanese basketball player. And so it's like, well, why are we talking about her now? Are you just trying to defer like what story is going to be coming out? And so
Yeah.
these are not my thoughts. I'm not a conspiracy theorist like that, but that's just what some people are like talking about, trying to lose the scent of this. I think it would be a big black mark on baseball if he's like.
Baseball's got a bad history with a couple of these big time stories, so they are more nervous about it than any other sport, I would imagine.
The two biggest betting scandals are the Black Sox of 1919, and then you got Pete Rose. So, like,
yes,
yeah, it is a huge storyline for baseball. Now that
and this is the biggest player on the planet.
Something that hasn't been done in nearly 100 years in what Ohtani's doing, pitching and hitting.
Yeah.
But, it's such a strange story that continues to unravel. Yeah. But, like, I could see Major League Baseball, because they've already noted that there was no baseball being bet on, that I wouldn't be surprised if MLB so much just kind of sweeps it under the rug.
Oh, they don't want to talk about this at all.
Well, he's their golden boy too. Like, he's the reason so many people tune in to watch. I mean, it gets me interested in watching. You're going to be, conspiracy theorist NBA. Hey, Michael Jordan, you were gambling on some games. Go play some baseball for a couple of years. Like,
I literally gave up all the coworkers talking about the Ohtani thing, and of course it went to that. And it was just like
very different things. And the Michael Jordan thing obviously was never confirmed, just rumor and everything else. But with Ohtani, it's like, man, that would be a blow to the marketing campaign, the face of baseball. Like, think about it. He's the face of baseball, and he doesn't even speak English.
No,
that's how big of a star he is in our market, in the North American market for baseball. That's how big of a star.
I can only imagine in Japan it must be tenfold. But this is fascinating to me because, I mean, the sports world that we're kind of living in now, that is developing around us, has now begun to accept gambling in all these sports.
It's integrated. It's weaved
in the last 3 years or whatever, now it's like every single podcast and broadcast and show is talking about it and is okay with it, and it's not only that, it's like pushing it hard to do, which is wildly
commercials
different.
I see while watching any sporting event is unreal. It's easily 10 per sport.
Yeah,
like
the sports podcasts I listen to, a couple of times when I get to the very, very end and they're just reading off every disclaimer for every state, for every gambling, and like, go here for help, and I'm like, Jesus. But it's fascinating because, I mean, obviously for a long time, sports pushed this as far away as possible, largely, I would imagine, due to a couple of those big baseball scandals kind of souring it for everybody. But now it's there. Now it's a part of it, and it's more accessible than ever. And we are getting a couple of these stories. Did you see that there was an NBA story that came out recently?
That's also not the first time that basketball has had a scandal in gambling. I mean, there's point shaving scandals,
the Donahue thing.
State College in New York at one point had one back in the 50s. Like, this is a somewhat reoccurring theme in sports. Like,
it's come when people want to make money, they can find a way. So yeah, I forget. I think it was like a Houston player or something. Somebody named Porter. Toronto player, and he basically would see what his like kind of over-unders were, would tell everybody to bet the unders, and then would kind of like get hurt in the first quarter and have to leave. That's a bummer. And then every time afterward, or a couple of the times afterwards, they would like show, or DraftKings, I guess, reports like these were the best bets for the day.
Like, and
every time it was like, oh, the biggest moneymaker for the day were this guy's unders. And it happened again, and then it happened again and again, and now it's like people are looking at it really, really tightly, and it gets dangerous. I mean,
so do you think? I know, the fantasy sports is its own type of gambling and stuff, but do you think gambling has gone too far, possibly, into the world of sports, where like it is so mainstream now that it's going to be hard to not hear stories like this? I feel like, on a somewhat regular basis, like once a year, or like we even had one for college baseball last spring. You know how crazy that is? Yeah. College fucking baseball. There's
Yeah, I mean,
tables.
it can happen when there are bets on all these things, and you can have some kind of impact on the game. I could see it. I mean, this has been actually a big problem recently in esports, League of Legends. There was I just saw this tweet literally this morning when I woke up, but they found that players were participating in win trading. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, where basically
Like,
you
oh,
pay the
you
person
lose
on
on
the other
purpose
team.
and then win the next one or something.
And I wasn't. They basically found that like players on every single team in this league were responsible for that to some degree. Like 8 of the 8 teams, 32 different players, because the gambling
Teams on
stuff
that one, or
come
is it
into.
within your own team? Like, hey, you win this round, I'll win the next one.
I this is only something I just very quickly saw when I woke up this morning, so I'm totally speaking on my ass. But it seems like they, I don't know, and recently even the gambling stuff has become a thing with like esports and stuff, and some of the like streamers that I watch on Twitch, like, oh yeah, I got this bet, I got that bet, or I'm doing this or that, and so it is just. I'm kind of, I don't want to say like worried for the next generation or whatever, but I am a little bit, just because the way it's coming up and the way it's sold to you, and it's all fun and it's all games, plus like the loot crateization, that's not a word, of like 2K,
Yes.
like the entire loot crate, which is a gambling adjacent fucking thing that they just are basically completely. That's like 80% of NBA 2K now, and Madden with the Ultimate Team packs and all the packs, and you open them and you pay for all the microtransactions, all the stuff in the mobile games. Like it's all kind of like that same gambling vein, and it's all kind of coming together. And it does seem like these things will kind of. I mean, how could they not continue to happen in this capitalistic world that we live in?
Especially when it's so
People are,
easy to be connected with everybody now, like texting,
oh god,
DMs,
yeah,
Twitter, whatever it is. You can basically reach anybody you want to now in the sports world to get any type
yeah,
of
and anybody
insight
can bet from
or
anywhere.
information that'll help you with your gambling. I have a hard time believing that this won't continue to happen at you know on a smaller scale. Sure, I don't expect
Yeah,
huge gambling conspiracy things to happen, but you're gonna get these small ones where a lot of people took the under, huh? Huh.
yeah. There's an element of human nature to it. If you're not hurting anybody. Oh, I can do this or that, and or I have this information or that information about certain things, and then you can, you spread
I
that out.
mean,
Yeah, I
I'll,
don't.
I'll tell you like this. I had so I for people that don't know, I do the play-by-play for the University of Portland for men's and women's basketball and stuff like that, volleyball and baseball as well. But I had
Yeah,
somebody
yeah,
hit me up at the beginning of the basketball season asking about Tyler Harris and whether or not he was going to play tonight. And I went to the guy's profile and I realized that he is a heavy gambler. And I said, hey, man, I appreciate you reaching out to me, but as somebody who works with the university, knows this information, I feel very uncomfortable knowing that you're a gambler giving out that type of information. And so, like,
yeah,
that has already happened to me once in the West Coast Conference. Like, that is kind of how
yes.
far that it's sort of gone. Now, do I think this person was trying to do anything malicious or anything like that? No, I don't. Like, he came across as a genuine West Coast Conference basketball fan,
Sure.
but the whole aspect of him being a heavy gambler that was in his Twitter bio, like that
Yeah, it puts
became
you
a
in a
red
weird
flag
situation.
where like I'm not going to share that information with you because
Yeah.
that could actually come back and hurt me in some way. And so like
Yeah.
it's a weird concept of just like having too much information. Like even
I mean, all the work that we do with all these different teams, we're like, there are rules about us not betting on any of these things. When I go to Blazers games, I'm not allowed to bet. I think technically being a contractor, I think there is a little bit more leeway. I do know some people who like work camera there and are like, yep, I always bet against the Blazers every game I work, so I get a little bit
well, does he
extra.
bet against him because the team is just bad, or is he actually trying to make money? You know,
I mean, what's the difference? See a
one of the
difference.
podcasts I listen to is just like, listen, I know this team's going to be bad for baseball, so I'm just going to bet against the money line every single time, and he makes money off of it because he just knows
I
the
mean,
team's
if you're
bad. It
betting,
doesn't mean he has inside information. He just knows
yeah,
the team is bad.
yes, yes, but like the team employee people there have to take like regular courses or whatever, virtual training stuff, and absolutely cannot bet on any of
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. And I'm pretty positive if I started doing it a lot, it would become a problem rather quickly. But yeah, so it's just It's weird, and the history of sports with this, and pretty much every industry, scares a lot of these places. But there is just so much money to be made. Then once they realized that, they were like, you know what, we'll figure out the controversy later because we're getting a lot of sponsorship money off of this, and it does drive interest in the game, like 100%. It does. I mean, that's half the reason like this March Madness stuff is so fun,
Oh,
is
this is
because
where they
everyone
make
makes a
most of their
bracket.
money. Yeah.
Everybody puts the money in, and everybody is watching the games because they are invested in it. Like some of my favorite times of watching March Madness have been when I'm in the one time we were in like Lake Tahoe and we are able to actually bet on a couple of the games, and you get into it. So there's positives to it, but it can get sketchy when there's a lot of humans that are working here, and it only takes a couple to kind of go in that other direction, and now you got a scandal.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Baseball.
You brought up March Madness. It's a perfect little segue. It is Sweet 16 Elite 8 weekend.
Baseball.
Hey, we lasted a long time on that one. I'm proud of you. Proud of you, partner. So Thursday is the start of Sweet 16. That is today, March 28th. Game starting at 4:09 our time, 7:09 Eastern. Arizona, Clemson start things off, followed by UConn, San Diego State, North Carolina versus Alabama, then Iowa State versus Illinois. I'd love to just to hear your initial thoughts on opening weekend of the tournament, and then your predictions now that we're in the Sweet 16.
Always great. The first 2 days, the first 2 real days of the March Madness tournament.
Not those playing games, yeah.
Playing games that we don't need. We don't need any expansion. It's good. It's a round number. The brackets are even. Stop it. But those first 2 days, first round or whatever, second round, God, are just like maybe some of my favorite days in sports. It's so great.
Best days, yeah.
They stagger the games. You're watching all of them back to back. You get a couple upsets. The quality of the basketball is not quite to the level of the NBA, but we're kind of used to that at this point.
I'd rather.
And there are. I mean, we're pretty used to watching, the level of college basketball, so it's maybe even less noticeable to us just because we see it so much more often. But there's a drop there. Of course, there is. It's a different league, different level, but it's still fun to watch. And you got some prospects in there. The first 2 days were great. I don't know, as far as like my own pool and stuff. I had the Golden Grizzlies beating Kentucky, so that was my big win in the first round.
Yeah.
And then I had Auburn in the championship, so that kind of took me back down to earth.
If it makes you feel better, I had Kentucky in my championship, so we kind of washed each other out there.
Yeah, we're in a similar place there. Other than that, I'm still kind of okay. I have Houston winning. We'll see what happens. And then you don't have Purdue winning.
No, I had Purdue losing in the Final Four to Kentucky. So
okay, so still good. Who is your winner?
I've got 3 of my 4 Final Four people still in it. The Kentucky one just kind of hurt a little bit, which that was the biggest gamble. They were the worst defensive team coming in, and I should have known that wasn't.
Yeah, so immediately after I saw the stat that was like Calipari has won like one of his last 5 tournament games. It's like, why was that not in the blurb?
Yeah.
That would have been good to know.
This was his best team though that he's had in the last 4 or 5 years though. So like that's why some people were so high on them. They could shoot the ball lights out, but their defense was atrocious.
Proved pretty quickly. Who is your champ?
My champ is UConn. I had UConn beating Kentucky in the final.
The repeat.
Yeah,
right?
I just think UConn is probably the more.
He seems strong. They've been killing everybody so far. Like it has in my Houston.
They did last year. They beat everybody by it was like 15 plus points.
Yeah, so that I went against. Usually, I have UConn going pretty far. For some reason, in the blurb, it said like the team that has won the championship last year has not made the Final Four in the year after that in a long time. For some reason, that got stuck in my head, and I went the other direction.
Like those Gators, I think.
They look very strong. Houston had to go through overtime just to survive. All the 1 and 2 seeds are still in, though.
That's what I was going to say. So, like, the first 2 days are always the most exciting. You get those, close. Some of them close games, close upsets. You get the occasional upset.
Cinderella stories.
But what you just said, a lot of this tournament has become chalk now that we're in the Sweet 16. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think you're going to probably get more competitive games now, where sometimes you get the occasional, double-digit seed. Obviously, it's NC State this year, but you get the occasional double-digit seed to get into the Elite Eight. Always fun to watch that. Don't get me wrong. I love seeing that. But then,
The
but
great
then
story.
they always run into the buzzsaw at some point. And get
Yeah, you
blown up.
can run up to like, okay, this is the level now. And then they just get absolutely blown by like, yeah, UConn or two. So
Exactly. So
maybe
like it's a
one
fun
for
story to
two.
watch them go all the way to the Elite Eight, Final Four, whatever. But sometimes it doesn't end up being the best game when it comes to a
Yes.
championship. Where I feel like now you've got, uh, I think all 4 1 seeds are still alive. You got 3 2s, and so like a high level program.
I thought all the 1s and 2s were still there.
I think one.
That, that was something.
No, you're right. All the 1s and 2s are still there. You are correct.
It was a 3, and Auburn is a 3.
Yeah. So the 2 3s are down, 2 4s.
There's a lot of big boys left in it. Your boy Zach Edey
Mm-hmm.
still running around. I'm kind of interested in this as well from like an NBA prospect angle, of course.
Which one?
We'll see. I don't know. I'm waiting for someone to prove themselves and be right there and climb up the ladder and be obvious. We'll see if it happens. I'm excited for the Sweet 16, so we'll kind of vibe it out. It does seem like not Houston. It does seem like UConn is on a pretty good grind right now, and maybe probably the favorites. I mean, obviously they're the favorites or the top
All right, I'm
one
going to go
seed.
through the games. I want quick trigger reaction. Who's going to win?
Bracket. All right. I don't remember what I put on my bracket, so
that's
this will
fine.
be good.
Hey, you can change now because some games.
Really off vibes.
Arizona versus Clemson.
Clemson.
Oh,
there it is.
I'm going to take Arizona.
Upset
UConn
already.
versus San Diego State.
UConn.
North Carolina versus Alabama. I'm taking.
I'm
taking Bama.
I was kind of thinking about it. They played pretty well in those first couple rounds. I'll take North
Carolina.
Carolina.
Is like the weakest of the one team, so I that's why I feel Alabama is the way to go on that one.
Okay, I'll still take North Carolina. We'll see.
Iowa State versus Illinois.
Illinois has been
they've been playing great basketball.
Yeah, they've yet to be in, I feel like, a close matchup. I may be wrong, but I'll take them.
They're not the best team in the tournament right now, but they're playing some of their best basketball in the season right now. So, yeah, I've got Illinois beating Iowa State and moving on to the Elite Eight. Friday matchups, Marquette versus NC State. NC State is on this survive and advance run like they were in the 80s when they won. They needed to win their conference tournament to get into the tournament. They did, and they did the same thing this
year. I think I know I have Marquette going further. I actually do think they might lose here. I've kind of been vibing with NC State as well.
NC State.
As the one lone Cinderella story that we've got. We've always got to have one, I feel.
Have to. Purdue versus Gonzaga. This is a rematch. Valley Invitational.
This is going to be good.
Gonzaga was not playing great basketball at the beginning of the year when they faced off against Purdue, and I think Purdue only won by like 12. So
who did Gonzaga beat to get here? Didn't they just beat an opponent? I thought they were going to lose last round, and they beat them. I forget.
Beat them pretty easily, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I forget who it was, but I was like, oh, this team might be legit then. Yeah, that sounds hype. Them versus Purdue, Zach Edey. I don't know if they necessarily have size to match him.
They crushed Kansas by 21.
Yeah, Kansas. Like
that. Yeah, that was. Now they did have some injuries at the end of the season, so it wasn't the Kansas team that we necessarily knew. But still, to blow the doors off of Kansas, that was their worst loss in a tournament, I believe, or at least in the Bill Self.
Wow.
So
I think I'll be rooting for Gonzaga, but I don't recall them having anybody with a lot of size that could match up with Zach Edey.
They tried to use Watson, and I don't think Greg played a whole bunch the first time they played each other. So I anticipate Watson and Greg kind of swapping duties on Zach Edey. But I think Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer are going to be the game changers for Purdue in this one, and that's why they take down Gonzaga.
Okay.
Houston versus
Duke. I think
Sorry, go on. What were you going to say?
No, I agree. I think so as well. I'm always root against Duke.
Yeah, same here. So go Houston.
And I have Houston.
You got to go with Houston. And then the last game of the Sweet 16, I'm not going to make you go through the Elite Eight, but the last game of the Sweet 16, Tennessee versus Creighton.
What seed is Creighton?
Creighton's a 3 seed. Mind you, they beat UConn this year.
Wow.
By the way.
I literally have no idea on this. I don't know. Tennessee.
I'm going to take Creighton. Creighton's got a big inside, averages 3 blocks, only 1 foul per game. They got a couple of sharpshooters from the outside, so I think they'll have some defense on connect for Tennessee. So I'm going to take the Blue Jays on this one. And shot special.
Oh, well, I can't argue with that. Are you excited, or have you been keeping track of the women's tournament at all?
I have for a little bit. I watched a lot of Gonzaga basketball, mainly because I was supporting my friend Ann Shaw. She was on the call for it. And then I also watched a bit of Caitlin Clark. She's obviously the most electric player in women's basketball right now. So, yeah, I've watched a little bit of the women's side of things. It made it a little difficult with our work this past week.
Yeah, I haven't watched as much as I would like. I do have I had one big bugaboo that I think I expressed to you.
You talked to me about this one already.
Quite a lot, because our Portland team won the conference and made the actual tournament.
13 seed, yeah.
I think 13 seed up against 3 seed Kansas State. I was like, okay, it's gonna be tough. Then I hear they're going to Kansas. I was like, oh wow, that's a tough draw. They're gonna have to play in Kansas. Then this is pure negligence on my part. Then I realized what the rules are for this tournament, which are that if you're a top 3 or 4,
if you're a top 4 seed in your bracket,
you host. That's a lot of advantages for a team that is already, based on the ranking, better than the other team on paper. That is crazy to me. So our little Portland team had to go to the Kansas State arena and play them in a home game and try to beat them. And it's just like, all of a sudden it clicked to me, because I saw a stat going into this that was like, 3 seeds in the women's tournament are like 112-5. And I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. And then I realized, like, oh, they're playing home games. Yeah. Of course, like Oregon State played 2 home games to win the first 2 rounds of the tournament are home games for all these teams. It kind of blows my mind. I understand that you kind of explained to me that it's a money decision that made a lot of sense as the women's game has been growing and it didn't have as many eyes and they had to do things in slightly different ways.
You weren't going to get those high bids that you would get for the men's tournament for these first 2 round games like you would for.
Yeah, and it makes sense. You do want to just send
a couple years ago, though. So, like you just said, the women's game has exploded. So I anticipate that probably changing in the next probably 5 years.
That's what I'm hoping.
But
it's an insane advantage. It's kind of okay when it happens in the men's tournament, because it's like a random happen chance, or it's like placement, or it's like, oh, but it's like every top seed getting 2 home games to start the tournament is kind of insane, and it doesn't allow for the fun of these tournaments where you're getting. There are not a lot of upsets in those first 2 rounds for the women, because that's an insurmountable task for a lot of those teams. Or it's just so I was not a fan of that. I would love to see them change that, but maybe like we're saying with the men's tournament now, they're going to have all these top seeds still in it as the women's tournament goes along, and hopefully those lead to stronger and better matchups, and not everyone's just playing home games and getting large advantages out of that. But I'm excited to watch the rest of it. I mean, LSU and South Carolina are both great teams, and Caitlin Clark's in there mixing it up, and I assume UConn is still pretty good, right? Paige around. Yeah, so
is playing great basketball right now.
I haven't
she looks unreal.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to watch as much as I would like, but it does seem like it will shape up for a pretty fantastic ending. If a lot of these
I just read was UConn made their 30th straight Sweet 16.
Insane. I mean, this is, and we grew up in the era where it was like, yep, they went 70-0 again or whatever, and it's like, what the hell?
And that was after the Taurasi and Sue Bird era too. Like they had these undefeated teams.
Yeah, all of these different, like they're like a Patriots dynasty, except they're still going. So it's pretty insane. And they're not even the favorites. I would have to assume.
South Carolina's the number 1 overall seed. They're undefeated. So yeah, they're driver's seat.
It could shape up to be a pretty awesome ending if all these names and characters are still in it at the end there. But I was a little bit bummed out about the structure of how it starts.
Yeah, it's kind of.
As a lower seed fan,
I've not paid attention to it. It's a little bit of a shock.
Yeah, I was shocked. Yeah, I was like, "What? Come on, okay, we don't. This is gonna be really hard to win now." Yeah, so yeah, but
you just said that it reminded me of Jason Bateman at dodgeball. I was shocked.
Shocked. It's a bold move, Clouden.
Speaking of bold moves, let's talk a little bit about the NBA. There is a odd story going on right now with ownership with the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Oh.
There was a selling of the team to minority owners back in 2021. It was Glenn Taylor, who's the majority owner of the Timberwolves, said he would sell the team to A-Rod and Mark Lore, who were the minority stake owners in the team, in paid increments since 2021. They just paid off the last installment last week. Now Glenn Taylor is trying to back out of the deal and saying he's not going to sell the team anymore. And a lot of people are speculating a little seller's remorse because, again, he agreed to this deal to sell the Timberwolves and the Minnesota Lynx, the WNBA team, two franchises for $1.5 billion in 2021. Since that deal...
Wait. The both of them weren't for that much, right?
It was a combined deal for $1.5 billion.
That's cheap.
Again, that goes into what I'm about to say, though. Since that deal was agreed to, NBA franchise valuations have skyrocketed. The Suns sell for $4 billion. The Dallas Mavericks sold for $3.5, and then the Charlotte Hornets, a god awful franchise, sold for $3 billion. And so now you kind of get the story of seller's remorse for Glenn Taylor, and now he wants to hang on to it, especially with the team having its best year in over 20 seasons, already at 50-plus wins. So I would not be shocked. I don't know the rules of how this works. I'm just basing it off of world implications that I may have heard in the past. I would not be shocked to see A-Rod and Lore come back with a suit against him, because you had to have signed some type of contract to allow them to make this purchase of this team in increments, monthly increments.
They've been paying him.
And they finished paying him last week. And now he's paying.
It's an obligation.
Right? So, like, you put up all the money that you needed to, and now that guy's backing out of the deal. For lack of a better phrase, going back to my college days, tough tits, bro. Like, that's what are you going to do? You agreed to it. First of all, it's not like $1.5 billion is a small amount of money.
It is insane. But for the valuation of those two franchises, like that, I thought that was the Lynx price alone, not the Lynx and the Timberwolves.
The funny thing is, the Lynx one is probably going to go up even more in the next few years because of the WNBA and their expansion that they're looking to do. And then the NBA, they're still looking for a couple teams too. So, and a TV deal, like you mentioned before we got on. So there are so many factors to where that guy could make an extra buck by holding out just a little bit longer. I would be absolutely livid if I was A-Rod and Mark Lore right now, because you agreed to this. You signed up for it. I've given you everything that you asked about it, and now you're pulling out the rug from underneath us. I'm coming after you, buddy.
Yeah, I would have to assume so. I mean, I never feel bad for A-Rod, so I can't quite get to that.
I don't feel bad for A-Rod or Mark Lore. I don't feel bad for
anybody. Any kind of purchase you're entering into this, and then, like, I mean, they would think they got a great deal. They've been paying him for years. Finally, we're about to get it. Oh, wait. No, you don't get to pull. What are you talking about pull it out? This is it. We're done. I'm sure there'll be a bunch of legalese and legal battles going on over that. I'm curious where that would end up landing. Or, I mean, they can't. I don't know. They force him to go through with the sale. They can't even do that.
Like, it's a legally binding contract that you had to have signed, right? Like,
I'm sure the NBA would maybe even get involved at some point and be like, "Hey, like, this is a business for everybody. You can't screw it up for everyone."
Yeah, I would find it hard that Adam Silver would not get involved with this to try to make the sale as smooth as possible. Because this sets a terrible precedent for anybody else that tries to sell a team now. Because basically all it's saying is, I wanted to sell the team, but it's been 4 years now, and I know the evaluation is 3 times as much. I don't want to sell the team anymore. It's like, well, no. You agreed to it when you agreed to it. You signed the papers. Like, you need to be held accountable to when you did that.
Any potential buyers would just not. They would dry up. They wouldn't. Why would you even?
I would be too scared about you just backing out now. Like, I want to own a franchise, but if I can't trust you, why would I give you a whole bunch of money? And the other part is, like, where does that money go for A-Rod and Lore? It's not like they get that money back, do they?
I would have to assume if he is trying to back out of this deal, he would have to give that back.
Well, they already paid in full. Like, it's just such a weird story that I've never, like, again, back to this, like, Ohtani thing, like, these weird sports stories that are happening over the last few weeks. But, like,
the money keeps going up.
Just, I don't understand why you would allow such a thing. That sets a bad precedent for every other team that would sell at that point.
Yeah, I would think they're going to get involved and look at this and figure out exactly what kind of contracts and clauses and if there even is an option to do this. Because, yeah, this is such a bad precedent for the future, especially when the league is going to have a new media rights deal and is probably looking for expansion, which means new buyers. They might be turned off by some of this news. I don't know. This is pretty classic Glenn Taylor, though, it sounds like. He's always kind of sucked. So
nobody's really liked that ownership.
I mean, since Kevin Garnett era, it's like pretty much been horrible. And there was some story recently even about how KG was coming back into the fold and trying to be nicer with them. And this Taylor guy was just too much of a douche, and so it didn't need to end up working out in that sense, even after they've been done playing and he's won a championship elsewhere. So par for the course for this guy. But we might have to keep an eye on that because nothing blows up bigger than billionaire deals. So this could get messy quick.
Yeah, I anticipate a lot of follow-up stories after this because you always hear about the team being sold. Like, even Dan Snyder, the scummiest of scum owners, didn't back out of the deal.
Putting from the government in his boat out in the waters. He sold it. Donald Sterling that went through. Like,
well, Donald Sterling was forced to sell, and I think Snyder was also somewhat in the same boat. But like, Snyder, I don't think he necessarily had to sell. I think he just felt the pressure of nobody wanted to deal with him anymore. So I was like, well, I guess I should get out now. Like, it's just I'm sure there's some instances probably back in like the 1800s with some baseball club, I'm sure, but like
not in the recent era. Yeah.
Everybody, it's been pretty clear. Like, all right, we're going to sell the team. Sure, the contract takes a couple months, but like nobody backs out.
No, I can't even think of any other situation even kind of approaching it in the major leagues. So.
Yeah, it's just it's a crazy story, in its own right. But yeah, I'm not sure where that's going to go. I think there's going to be a lot of he said.
Be another 3 years of court battles before we know, and then by then they'll have expanded, and I don't know who will own the team, but the team's going to be in the playoffs and maybe a 1 seed this year, so that's a weird thing to hang over them.
I don't know. I guess I wouldn't be shocked if Silver just came in and said, no, you sold the team, you have your money, you're now a minority owner, they're the majority owner. Like, I could see him just making an executive decision like that to put it behind everybody.
Any other commissioner I could. He's that would be probably one of the first big Adam Silver puts his foot down moments. He hasn't been doing too many of those, I feel like.
His first scandal was Donald Sterling as soon as he got into the office. What do you mean he's never done anything like that?
Well, yeah, but that's very much like I don't know if I want to say an easy win, but everyone wants the same thing in that situation.
I think you're kind of able to get the thing here. Nobody likes this guy.
True. Also true. Well, maybe he'll have the public backing and we'll just be like, yeah, get out of here, dude. You already sold it. It's kind of clear cut. But he has not so much been like, this is what my decision is and you're going to follow it in my eyes. He's been a lot more laissez-faire. But
he's not authoritative like some commissioners come off as.
Like his predecessor even, who was like, no, this Kobe trade's not happening. This Chris Paul trade. Man, not happening because we are on the team right now. It's like, this is even weirder to me that the
was
league
a strange one by Stern.
Which, ironically, the G League Ignite is dissolving after this year. The G League team owned by the team because they said because it's less useful for players to develop there,
things like that.
NIL in college means that those players they thought they were going to get are going to stay, and I mean the team is like god awful. They're in the G League, they have like 3 wins or something, but they have prospects, and that's not what they're there for.
They're 18-year-old kids. I mean, growing up against 24, 25-year-old guys trying to make an NBA roster right away. So, like,
Yeah, it's always a weird prospect having any league-owned team, though. So I'm happy to not have that because that just I don't know where the rules are or where the line is or how they're even supposed to operate. So it's always strange. But yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on this story. Could be big news. I mean, owners changing hands definitely has a big effect.
As we approach, over an hour now, do you have a nerd corner for us this week? It's been a couple weeks, but I don't have it off the top of my
Uh,
head. I don't have anything that's grinding my gears this week.
yeah, I already got through a couple of those. I was just gonna probably talk a little bit about a movie that I saw that I told you about right before we started this. But I saw Poor
Yeah,
Things that Emma Stone won uh, Academy Award for Best Actress. It won production design, costume, and makeup.
yeah, one like four
I think
Oscars, didn't it?
there was one more big one. Yeah, I can't remember that had something to do with the design of it. But it was incredible. And I think we at some point talked on the pod like, oh, that won over Barbie, which is the one I thought would have got production
Yep,
design. So it must
yep.
have a lot going on. It absolutely does. It 100% earned that. It's a beautiful movie in a lot of weird ways. They apparently filmed on a lot of sound stages, so it's like very controlled environments, and it's like kind of a fantastical fairy tale world in some regards. It's all kind of the way that they said was like they wanted to see the world to look like what it would through this character's eyes, who is the movie is kind of a Frankenstein allegory, and there's Emma Stone is playing this woman who's going out into the world and kind of discovering all this stuff. So she has this kind of very wide-eyed fairy tale view of stuff, and that is very much implemented in the world. But the movie is just awesome. Fantastic cast with Willem Dafoe and his prosthetic kind of face that he has and his character, which is like he's like this world famous surgeon, and his face is like fucked. For lack of a better word, it's like patchworked back together and stuff. And his whole backstory is that like it's horrible, but he like kind of is fine with it. But he's like, yeah, my dad would always try. He was a surgeon, and he would always try to find answers to these different ailments or things. So
Experiment on him.
like he would experiment on me. He would like nail my fingers to the
It's
floor or
classic
something, and
father-son bonding. That's all.
absolute crazy stuff. And his whole response the whole time is like, well, he was trying to make the world a better place. So I was just a part of that. Like he's not mad or bothered or damaged, but it's like he's just like I am a man of science, and
Sounds
so
like he's
he's like totally okay with it. Absolutely weird. Mark Ruffalo is in this movie. I said before this to you, I think it's my favorite Mark Ruffalo movie ever. He's fantastic in it. He plays like a 1920s, what do they call it? Like a cad or whatever, like a rake. They call him like a very, yeah, a man's man who's just kind of womanizing and gallivanting all over the place. He's this fantastic mustache. He's awesome in the movie. It's a weird premise. I don't want to say what the premise is. They get into it relatively quickly in the movie, but it's better done in there as far as like what is actually going on. But it's pretty pretty insane stuff. It's a very wacky world. The first like 40 minutes or something are in black and white, and then it kind of gets to a story point where everything changes, and the rest of the movie is in color, and it's beautiful color, beautiful world. I loved it. Emma Stone was fantastic in it. She definitely earned this one. Yeah, it was awesome. It immediately debuted at like my number two movie of last year, over Killers of the Flower Moon, slightly over Godzilla minus one,
Oppie?
and and Oppie, and and it jumped over Oppenheimer. Actually, in reappraising it, I think I had Godzilla jump over Oppenheimer too.
There's an Oppenheimer too? Just
Well, yeah, it's called Godzilla. It's great. Where's that list here somewhere? Yeah, now I have Across Spider Verse 1, Poor Things 2, Godzilla minus 1, minus color 3, Oppenheimer 4.
okay.
But it was awesome. I highly recommend it. Uh, I kept thinking about it for a long time afterwards. Yeah, it's got a lot of great cast, a lot of great characters coming through there, and it is just a marvel for the eyes. But it's also just a fucking weird ass movie. Like he lived this character that Willem Dafoe is, the scientist guy who's taking care of Emma Stone, who's like kind of his daughter, we'll say in the beginning, and he's just walking around his house, and he just like experiments on stuff. So like they have a dog with the head of a duck. Yep, yeah, that's what it sounded like. All their little animals are walking around. They have a duck body with like a pit bull head on it, or like a pug head on it actually, and it's just like, so they start you there. So you're like, this is so weird, but they make you like live in it for long enough that you're like, this is just the world. This is what it is. So then everywhere they go from there, you're kind of along for the journey, it feels like. But yeah, I loved it. It was awesome. Simple little one-off movie that has a beginning, middle, and end, which is not something that we always get nowadays.
Yeah, you don't
right?
get beginning, middle, and ends anymore.
No, it's just a story that is finished for all intents and purposes. But I loved it. It was great. And I'm going to butcher the guy's name. The director is Yorgos something. I don't know.
You nailed it.
In all the like interview stuff I watched, they always just call him Yorgos, and his last name is something international. I don't remember. But he made The Favorite with Emma Stone and Olivia Colman, I think.
Yorgos Lanthimos?
Yes, yeah. That sounds right. He's made a lot of movies that I haven't seen yet that I've heard are fantastic, like Dogtooth, Killers of the Sacred Deer, I think it's called. So there's a couple more things to
Has he made foreign films? Not that's
add to my watch
but
list.
I just ask.
I
guess I could just look at his IMDb that I was just on.
Yeah, well, I mean that's all I'm gonna do right now too. But
oh, he made The Lobster?
Yeah,
I've seen The Lobster.
That's you're right. Yes, that's the other one that I ended up that I actually have seen, which is pretty good.
I think it sounded like you morphed two together. There's one that's called The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and then there's one called Dogtooth. So like two different.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
It sounded like one title to me, and I was like, wow, that's really long.
Yeah, those are different. I've heard for a long time Dogtooth is like an incredible classic. I have no idea what it is, because even the poster is very like, what is that?
Yeah, I don't know what that's even about.
It's like little line. It's some kind of mathematical line equation or something. I don't know.
Controlling manipulative father locks his 3 adult offsprings in a state of perpetual childhood by keeping them prisoner within the sprawling family compound. That actually doesn't sound bad. That sounds interesting. What a 7.2 out of 10.
So it is something I want to see. The Lobster I quite enjoyed. The Favorite I loved. I really loved The Favorite. That's a great movie. And they talked a lot about how he started using like some like fisheye lens kind of looks in that movie that influenced Poor Things a lot. And there are like some absolutely kind of wild camera choices, I guess I would say, in this. There's a couple of them where he literally has like the only part of the frame that's like camera is like this little circle in the middle, and everything else is black. And he'll use that camera like a couple times in certain situations. I don't know, very, very inventive stuff going on constantly. So I loved it. I'm still thinking about it. I kind of like want to watch it again. So at some point I probably will.
Got all the free time in the world right now.
I do.
Okay.
Right after this.
I'm going to call this a little PPR. Little post...
Words per reception?
No, little post podcast recording. There was a different story that came out. You brought up Caitlin Clark a little bit ago, talking about the March Madness thing. Did you see the Big Three offered her $5 million?
Oh, yeah, I meant to bring this up when we were talking about her. Yeah, I thought it was 5.
I
heard it was 5 million for like. I thought you said 3. Yeah, I heard 3. Gotcha. Yeah, I heard it was like for like 10 games, and that she could basically play in the off season of the WNBA, and it's like, why would you not
bring in another
sign up
to help out that league, and then 2 line her pockets? Although she'll get enough endorsement deals that it probably won't matter that much for her, but like.
Even that would.
When I say this, I don't mean this in a negative way, but that $5 million would trounce what she's making in the WNBA.
Yeah.
I'm sure the contracts will change in the WNBA in the next 5 years, and I hope they do. But that $5 million blows any deal that she would get from the WNBA out of the water.
Yeah, insane. And you're just playing basketball in the off season. It filters back to the WNBA to people who watch that. Will maybe come back with you the next time. So I think that sounds great. It would actually probably get me to even maybe watch that Big 3 league, which is not really been something that I've been super interested in since like its inception way back when.
I want to say it started near COVID. So at some point that was like one of the few sporting events.
I thought before that. But yeah,
I thought it was like just before COVID it started, and then like they had it going on during COVID. I don't know. I could be misremembering.
There was a little bit of hype when it first started, and like Allen Iverson was like a player coach or something. And I remember Joe Johnson would just go down there and light it up. Like he would score like 40, 50 points a game and come back to the NBA and get a couple weeks.
Get a
and then
10-day.
They'd get cut. And he'd go back down and just rip people apart in the big three. Like, so it seems like a win-win, honestly. It sounds great. It makes a lot of sense.
I know, like with some sports contracts, like I used to know this guy who played minor league baseball, and they in your contract you like weren't allowed to play other sports. And he ended up tearing his ACL because he was playing basketball in the off season, and then they terminated his contract. So like,
I mean, yeah,
I don't anticipate the WNBA having that like rule in their contract, but at the same time, she's playing ball, so like, don't you think that would kind of play into what she's already going to be working out and playing basketball and working on drills and doing everything anyways in the off season?
Exactly. You're not like going snowmobiling or something, or ski or some kind of sport like that where it's outside of your realm and it can be dangerous. But it's like she's going to be playing basketball. They're not playing that hard.
Yeah,
the big
yeah.
three.
Like, I don't anticipate anybody just coming up and giving her forearm shiver and knocking her to the ground or anything.
Yeah, as long as Kendrick Perkins isn't added to the rosters, I think we're okay. He doesn't need any more money. It seems like he's doing okay.
Being a talking head on ESPN. He'd be fine.
Yeah, I will say real quick, I forgot F1 update. My guy Carlos Sainz got a win.
Yeah.
This is a great story, actually. He got appendicitis last race. Had to get a surgery and had somebody else race for him that week, so he was out. And then he came back this week and qualified, I think, in second or third for the start of the race. Was holding behind Max. Yeah, I think he actually even passed Max early on. And then the one thing that can stop Max from winning a race, his tire caught on fire, and he was out. He did not finish the race. He was trying to win his 10th straight Grand Prix, I believe. He hadn't had a DNF in I don't even know how many races. It had been a while. I think a couple of years. And so as soon as he was out, everyone kind of like got up in their chairs, like, wait a minute, well, this is a race. Wait, he's not going to just run away with it. We can do something. And little did they know, Carlos ran away with it. And he's my favorite driver. He ended up getting the win, coming back off of appendicitis in a year where he is out of this. He's out of a job next year. He's trying to basically sell himself up to any team that would be interested now and be like, hey, I'm not going to be a Ferrari next year. Lewis is coming over and taking my spot. I just want to race though with this car. And the guy who replaced me although he was like a 17-year-old kid, like, and raced pretty well. He got like P11 or something. So it's like I just took the same car and came in and won this race. So hopefully that'll do a lot for him next year and getting him like a good spot and hopefully some kind of quality car where he can still be competitive, because there is certainly a quick drop off if you're not on one of those kind of top 4 teams and then you're just kind of putzing around in the back row trying to pass a couple people here and there. It's not the same. So it's a lot about equipment over there. So I'm glad he got a win and hopefully prove that next season he deserves to get a good spot on a good team. So yeah, let's go, Carlos. Hell yeah.
All right. Any other things you want to add before we wrap up today's show?
No, I think that was the big one I did want to add. Did want to throw that in there. It's a little F1 update. So we'll see how things go.
Yeah, for sure.
That being said, Max is still leading the race, or leading the year's rankings after not even finishing. He was still number one driver, but
he's
it's close.
Pretty dominant. Like you said, it's rare that he doesn't finish a race. So
yeah, and that's about the only thing that'll stop him from not winning that race is if he doesn't finish it. So fun stuff though.
All right, well, that wraps up another episode of Sportslandia. Thanks for tuning in. That was Ray Bradley. I'm Brian Slyke. All this is brought to you by the Next Professional Athlete platform. And we'll catch you next time we're back on.